sitting here thinking about how parents that are like myself, that are believers, and we don't get an opinion because we side with the word of God, but we love our kid. Like we're not throwing our kids away. We love our kids and treat them like any other, child. But there is this period of mourning that happens. There's this grief period that happens when you have to mourn the loss of the idea of who you expected your child to be. The plans you had when you carried them, the plans you had when you held them in your arms when they were first born. You kind of map out this idea of what life is going to look like. And when a child specifically hits you as a believing parent with I'm LGBTQIA or whatever, that's a blow on so many different levels. It's a spiritual blow because there is, because of what we believe, there is a concern for their soul. There's also, again, the ideology of, or the idea that they are going in the opposite way of what you thought they would be. And sons, you may have dreamt of their wedding day and their kids with their wife, and daughters, you may have done the same thing with husbands. And it throws you out of whack. And while people may be angry or people may be Bible thumping you concerning how to deal with your kids, you're very much grieving. You're mourning the loss of who you thought they were.
I want to speak to all the judges out there who never went to law school or obtained a Juris Doctorate degree. I have a word today for all the perfect patties of the world who find fault in others but never in their own actions. I especially have a message to all the Bible-toting Christians who abide by 1 Corinthians 7:2, which states, "Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband." Y'all love to quote Bible scriptures when it fits your narrative, but that particular scripture rarely gets repeated. We don't have to ask why. Today, I am speaking on homophobia, which is the dislike of or prejudice against gay people. I'm going to focus my attention more so on gay men because lesbians are often more accepted because men glamorize the act of a threesome or menage a trois. But let's begin with addressing homosexuality. I specifically want to address the prefix homo because it essentially means same or alike. People who are drawn to or who deeply love someone who was born with the same genitalia as their own, they share a whole entire life outside of the bedroom. Did you ever stop to think about that? Those who have a problem with that lifestyle mainly thinks about or has a problem with what takes place when they're being intimate. Out of the entire word homosexual, the main focus is on the root word sex. I stress this because the judgment, fear, and hatred is always honed in on what happens inside the privacy walls of members of the LGBTQ community. I hear things like, "I just don't understand how two men could," or "Why not get the real thing instead of using bedroom toys?" Or, "I hope they don't kiss their kids with that mouth." I can't even fathom being out on a date with my husband and someone, a complete stranger, sees me and starts silently questioning whether or not I'm a top or a bottom. Well, listen up. Some of the things that go on behind the private walls of so-called straight people have landed them in same-sex prisons because of the vile and heinous acts they perform with members of the opposite sex, the same sex, and even animals. If you follow the La Truth Saga, You've undoubtedly heard some people placing the letter A at the end of a man's name. The A ending stems from the Spanish language, which refers to something or someone who is feminine. The masculine version ends with the letter O. No, I'm not trying to give a Spanish lesson, even though habla español, pero no muy bien. I'm a novice. Calling a man named David Davina or George Georgia is done in an attempt to insult, ridicule, and demasculate that man. You'll hear men called sassy when they decide to speak up in defense of the truth. The hope is to strike a nerve and send that man into defense of his own masculinity and ultimately to silence his opinions. Aside from the intimate bedroom acts, can we talk about the strong bond that exists between same sex couples? Are we not concerned about the union they form while educating their kids in a world full of prejudice? Same sex couples have the same challenges as any other couple when it comes to relationships, finances, and education. What about the scholars and actors who spent a large quantity of their lives studying just so they can share their knowledge and skills with all of us? Did you know that the expensive designer clothes you wear, the food you eat at these high end restaurants, the art that you display so proudly in your homes, hell, the actual home design that you love so much? Many of these things were likely created by the hands of an extremely talented individual who just happened to be gay or lesbian. So I guess it's okay to reject them, but not their talents. We need to open our minds and become independent thinkers when it comes to accepting or embracing people who we deem different from us. We should embrace them because they are kind, decent human beings who deserve to be treated no less than us. Just because your clique feels a certain kind of way, it doesn't mean you have to feel that way too. Be proud to speak your own truth and show the world how minding your business can lead to a life that's balanced and stress free. A soft life, if you will. If you ask a homophobic person why they don't like gay people, I promise you their response will be just as prejudiced and ignorant as asking a white person why they don't like black people. You'll likely be told that it's because the Bible is against it. Well, the Bible isn't against slavery, but you are. I know. Deuteronomy is in the Old Testament, so we don't really have to abide by that. It no longer applies. How convenient. Please stop using the Bible to justify your prejudice and biases. The Bible doesn't even oppose homosexuality, it doesn't even deal with homosexuality in general. When you judge an entire population of people with no exceptions, it's never truly justifiable, except perhaps in the case of pedophiles. I don't believe there's redemption for them. They have a psychiatric disorder for which there is no cure. And there's a distinction, though, between a pedophile and those who have pedophilic tendencies but never act on them. As sad as it is, Black families will disown their child for growing up gay, but will keep the family pedophile a secret. Did you know that a large number of homeless people in the US are made up of gay teens? It's no wonder that some gay people choose to remain inside the proverbial closet because they already know what's in store for them after they make the choice to come out. Have you ever felt the need to sit down with your parents and say, I have something to tell you, and I really don't know how to break it to you other than to just come right out and say it? I'm straight. Of course you haven't. And the reason is because being straight or attracted to someone of the opposite sex is considered normal in this society, and no one judges you for that, not even gay people. It's a shame that a classification even needs to be made. If it wasn't for the hatred and mistreatment of gay people, there wouldn't even be a need for gay rights because the protections would be covered under the Human Rights Act. As children, we were taught through actions or behaviors that the world is a certain way. But then we grow up and see that the world is different than what we were taught it should be. That is the time to challenge what we were raised to believe as children. Ask questions, do your research. You can become a lifelong learner and not be stuck in the old ways of thinking and judging. Let's face it, the world is changing and there's nothing you can do to stop it. You can, however, change the way you think and react towards information that's contrary to your beliefs and toward people who don't identify the way that you do. Have you heard the saying, what you eat doesn't make me poop? That's an actual metaphor. It means that someone else's actions or choices won't directly affect you. In this 21st century, we still have people around the world who feel the need to cringe or use homophobic slurs when they encounter someone they believe to be not straight or, let's just be honest, to be gay. Of all the letters in the LGBTQIA plus membership, it's the G word that gets the most hate. Is it because we were taught that men should be strong and stern and muscular and leaders who never display their emotions because it's a sign of weakness? That men should only wear dark, loose fitting clothing because wearing pink is feminine and only to be worn by girls? For your information, gay men wear black suits and lace up hard bottom shoes just like any other man. And ladies, if you know that getting styled by a gay man is a whole vibe that can make your biggest hater stare with admiration. My point is, it's okay to broaden your thinking and challenge the norms concerning the status quo or the way that things should be. Try to rationalize the negative judgment of homosexuals, and I promise you, you'll be left with more questions than answers because it just doesn't make sense. Not everyone lives their lives the way you do. Not everyone likes the things that you like. And thankfully, not everyone thinks alike, or this world will be one big boring place. Stop caring about how other people live their lives. It's not your business. It doesn't help or harm your pockets, nor does it jeopardize your health unless you become so obsessed that you worry yourself into a migraine or an ulcer. Well, that part's on you. Until you've had to come out of the infamous closet and sit your parents down and say, Mom, Dad, I'm straight. You'll never truly understand what it's like to be judged based on your feelings toward another human being that happens to use the same pronouns as you do. In closing, I just want to remind you that it doesn't cost a dime to mind your own business. No one is asking for your tolerance or acceptance as it relates to their private lives, no more than you would. My challenge to each of you who are able to hear my voice is to be thankful for another day to live your life as you choose. Show respect and courtesy to all human beings, regardless of how they love and move around the world in the comfort of their own skin. If you feel comfortable walking up to a complete stranger and say, "Excuse me, but I'm extremely uncomfortable with the way you live your personal life," then I think it's time that you re-examine yourself. Think about how you would feel if someone approached you, especially a stranger, and said, "I don't like you because you're black." What does anything about your race or your skin tone have to do with them? Can you wrap your brain around the point that I'm trying to make? Racism is ignorant. Most people get that. And homophobia is just as ignorant. Homophobia, like other forms of prejudice, can be challenged and changed through education, exposure, and open dialogue. Many people who once held homophobic views tend to change their attitudes after learning more about LGBTQ people or after developing deeper personal connections with them, being totally aware of their orientation or even how they identify. In a world full of hate and prejudice, let's choose love. It's perfectly fine to be part of the minority. And if a secretly gay person ever chose to reveal their identity to you, it says a lot about you. and your character that you were trusted enough to receive their truth without the fear of judgment or disdain. So the next time someone brings you gossip saying so-and-so is gay, ask them a one-word question. And it's a subtle way to discourage gossiping behavior. If you find yourself struggling with negative feelings toward gay people, it might be helpful to take a step back and reflect on the reasons behind those feelings. It's important to remember that everyone deserves respect and kindness regardless of their sexual orientation. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.